With regards to the meeting etiquette, at previous council meetings, unfortunately, we have had interruptions from the public gallery and the audience. I would like to take this opportunity to remind the public that to enable the council to conduct its business, if there are interruptions at today's meeting, I would ask the individual or individuals to stop and give a warning. If this continues, I would ask security to remove the person or group from the council chamber and will adjourn the meeting. Members of council, please can I ask you to indicate when you wish to speak by raising your physical hand. If you are invited to speak, please use the microphone on the lectern in the middle of the floor if one has been provided, or walk to the nearest microphone stand on your left or right side and to stand close to it when talking. Please do not move the microphones when speaking and do not approach the dais. Please can I ask members and officers to introduce themselves when speaking. I would like to ask that everyone turns their mobile phones off to silent mode. We are not expecting a fire drill this evening, so if the alarm sounds, please remain calm and follow the instructions of the town hall staff. I am now moving to item 1, apologies of absence. I have received apologies of absence for this evening's meeting from councillors Miriam Dawood, Caroline Lafathway, Anthony McAlmont, Joy Luguda, Daniel Lepathway, Thelma O'Doy, Celine, well, you're here, aren't you, Celine? Lakmini Shah, Rachel Tripp, Tony Wilson, and Cecilia Welch. Are there any apologies for absence from councillors to be recorded? Okay, thank you. Shaban Hamid, okay. Yeah. Thank you very much indeed. I now move to item 2, declarations of interests.
Sorry, Chair.
Oh, sorry, Councillor McCormack.
Esther Hudson.
Oh, yes, of course, thank you. Are there any members wishing to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests or any other interest they may have in any matter which is to be considered at this meeting?
Chair, I think that was for an apology.
Sorry. All right.
Hi, there's an emergency motion tonight and there's quite a lot of information here, but amongst one of the actions in it is for Newham to endorse the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty, and I'm a paid advisor to the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty Initiative, so I won't be voting on that motion unless I'm advised that it's acceptable for me to do so.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Ken. This is the extraordinary general meeting. So what you're referring to is referring to the full council meeting, and you'll have to clear that before we can actually do anything about it. This is the extraordinary general meeting at the moment to deal with one particular item. Okay? Thank you very much indeed. I now move to item 3, conferring the title of Honorary Older Woman on Miss Patricia Holland. This can be located in the extraordinary meeting council papers at pages 7 to 10. Mayor Roxana Fiaz, you have 5 minutes to present this report.
Thank you very much, Chair, and hello, colleagues, on what is a warm and balmy early evening of these hot summer months. Look, colleagues, at the last full council meeting, there was widespread agreement that former councillor Patricia Holland should be made an alderwoman of the borough in view of her distinguished contribution to the council and the borough of Newham. The Local Government Act 1972, as amended, specifies that to create an alderperson, there is a need to hold a special council meeting, and that at least 2/3 of the members voting in attendance need to pass a resolution conferring the honorary title on the person concerned. The report before you presents two principal recommendations that, in recognition of eminent service and services rendered to the council and to the borough, former councillor Patricia Holland should become an honorary alderwoman of the London Borough of Newham. As the report makes clear, Patricia served on the council for over 20 years, during which time she was a passionate representative and advocate for the people of Custom House Ward and an advocate for a range of local concerns. She took on a very wide range of responsibilities, both within the council and the wider community, during periods where she acted in a civic leadership position as the civic mayor, and she's highly regarded amongst the community she served for many, many years. It is fitting at this point in her life and in this year when she sadly had to bear witness to her husband passing away earlier this year, that she is acknowledged for her service to the people of Custom House and the London Borough of Newham. And that is why I am pleased to propose the recommendations in this report be agreed, and I trust, colleagues, you will be very supportive of that. Thank you very much, Chair.
Do we have a seconder? Vinda, you're seconding? Thank you. Would you like to speak? You have 3 minutes if you want to do so. Or there's another name seconded in. Councillor Searuz.
Touch the mic. Thank you very much, Chair, and I am absolutely delighted to second this motion. Pat was born and brought up and lived all her life in Custom House, and she took her role as being a councillor very seriously. Pat wasn't interested necessarily in all the committees of the council. She was only ever interested in what was good for the people of Custom House, and she fiercely protected that role. She very rarely did she ever make a note of any casework, because she would just phone an officer, because she picked up casework every minute she walked out of her door. She was one of a kind, really. Though I was only a councillor with her for 4 years, I had known Pat for probably 30 years before that, and she never changed. She was constantly fighting for the people of Custom House. She did an awful lot of good. So for some of you who will know that there is a statue for the 3 dockers in Excel, Pat raised all the money for that, and one of those dockers actually portrayed is her husband. So she was a really good sort, and actually when we were door knocking before May, I got really fed up with the number of people who said, well, where's Pat then? Well, why isn't Pat here? And she now has sadly had to move out of Custom House to get the care that she needs. But I keep in constant contact with her. And the first thing she always asks is, and what about this in Custom House, and what about that? And I think, oh my goodness, she's never going to give up. So I am delighted to second this, and she will be so proud that she has had this recognition from a council that she has served, and actually on behalf of the people of Custom House. So thank you very much.
Does any other councillor wish to speak on this item? Thank you very much. Mayor Fiaz, would you like to respond?
Just formally to note the contributions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. We'll now move to the vote. Those in favour of this item, please indicate by show of hands. Thank you very much indeed. Any against? Any abstentions? That is therefore carried. Thank you very much indeed. I now declare that this section of this meeting is now closed. So thank you all very much indeed. Thank you. We resume with full council in about 5-6 minutes' time. So if you need to have a break, please do so. Thank you. Thank you. Members standing, please be seated. Chief Whip.
Councillor Islam.
Good evening again. I would like to welcome the Mayor, all members and our guests to the Old Town Hall, Stratford, for the ordinary meeting of the Council. This replaces the ordinary Council meeting, which was scheduled for 18th July, but cancelled following the Met Office issuing a red warning for the first time due to the exceptional heat. For constitutional purposes, the meeting was cancelled for July, but for practical reasons, we are treating this as a scheduled meeting. Thereby, deadlines for urgent matters and amendments still apply. I would like to welcome the members of the public and press who are physically attending or watching on YouTube. The meeting is being filmed for broadcast on YouTube. The cameras are mainly focused on councillors and others making contributions. With regards to the meeting etiquette, at previous council meetings, unfortunately, we've had interruptions from the public gallery in attendance. I would like to take this opportunity to remind the public that to enable the council to conduct its business, if there are any interruptions at today's meeting, I would ask the individual or individuals to stop and give a warning. If this continues, I will ask security to remove the person or group from the council chamber and will adjourn the meeting. Members of council, can I ask that you indicate when you wish to speak by raising your physical hand? If you're invited to speak, please use the microphone or the lectern in the middle of the floor if one has been provided, or walk to the nearest microphone, stand on your left or right side, and to stand close to it when talking. Please do not move the microphones when speaking and do not approach the dais. Please can I ask members and officers to introduce themselves when speaking. I would like to ask that everyone turns their microphones to silent mode. We are not expecting a fire drill this evening, so if the alarm sounds, please remain calm and follow the instructions of the town hall staff. I am now moving to item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence. I have received apologies for absence for this evening's meeting from councillors Mariam Dawood, Joshua Garfield, Lester Hudson, Caroline Lepathway, Anthony McAlmott, Joy Luguda, Daniel Lepathway, Thelma O'Doy, Lakmini Shah, Rachel Tripp, Tony Wilson, and Cecilia Welch. Are there any apologies of absence from councillors to be recorded? Yes, Councillor. Sorry, I didn't get that. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Any others?
The whip's there.
Thank you. I'm now moved to item 2 on your agenda, declarations of interest. You can find on page 5 on your agenda. Are there any members wishing to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests or any other interests they may have in any matter, which is to be considered at this meeting?
I think Councillor.
Hi, Councillor Vaughan. Lewis Coffey, Green Street West. I'm a member of Newham Cyclists. Newham Cyclists is mentioned in one of the motions further on today.
Thank you very much. Councillor Penton.
Sorry for being so keen last time. Just a pecuniary interest. The emergency motion that's been tabled tonight mentions endorsement of the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty, and as set out in my register of members' interests, I'm a paid advisor to that treaty, so I won't be voting on that motion. Secondly, I'll also declare as well, although it's not a pecuniary interest, I too am also a member of Newham Cyclists.
Thank you very much. Councillor John.
I like to state a peculiar interest. I am a member of Newham Cyclists as well.
Thank you. Any more? Thank you very much indeed. Item 3, minutes. Okay, we have 2 sets of minutes to approve. The minutes of the annual council meeting held on the 25th of May 2022 and the last ordinary council meeting held on the 20th of June 2022. I can confirm as chair of council that officers have received amendments to both sets of minutes from Councillor Nate Higgins, which I have accepted and have agreed with these amended will be recorded accordingly. These amendments relate to naming the minority party as the Green Party, recording the abstentions of the Green Party, annual council minutes of the 25th of May 2022 to reference Councillor Higgins' statement on item 12, minutes of 20th of June to reference Councillor Higgins' statement in relation to 15-minute neighbourhoods, minutes of 20th of June to reference Councillor Keelan's statement on item 9, for votes motion to include a final agreed motion as an appendix to the minutes. Firstly, I move as a correct record the minutes of the annual council meeting held on the 20th of May 2022, outlined on pages 9 to 20 of the published agenda, subject to the amendment described. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor. Have you got that?
I'm happy to formally
Thank you.
move.
Oh, thank you very much. Do we have a seconder?
Yeah.
Is that agreed? Thank you. Any abstentions? Take it now. Thank you very much indeed. The minutes of the last ordinary council meeting held on the 20th of June 2022, as outlined on pages 21 to 52 of the published agenda. With the inclusion of those amendments, I move as a correct record the minutes of the last ordinary council meeting held on the 20th of June 2022. Do I have a seconder, please? Formally, thank you. Is that agreed? I can't hear you. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. I now move to item 4, Newham Partners Update. For Partners Update this evening, I am pleased to welcome Sir David King, who is joining us remotely from Greece. Sir David was the government's chief scientific advisor for the year 2000 to 2007, during which time he raised awareness of the need for governments to act on climate change. From 2013 to 2017, Sir David was the UK Permanent Special Representative for Climate Change. Sir David has published over 500 papers on science and policy, for which he has received numerous awards, and holds 22 honorary degrees from universities around the world. He is the founder and chair of both the Centre for Climate Repair at Cambridge and Climate Crisis Advisory Group. Good evening, Sir David. You now have up to 10 minutes, after which members have up to 10 minutes to ask any questions they may have. Sir David. Just one minute, please. We have no volume here.
Thank you very much, Chairman of Council and Mayor. It's a great honour for me to be addressing this council. And as you've just indicated, I have quite a long period of activity in the negotiations on climate change. And it is something that I'm very, very concerned about, because we are not close enough to doing enough to manage to create a manageable future for humanity. And it's as serious as that. I've got a slide presentation, and if somebody could put it up for me and for you, that would be helpful. And there it is. So I think the first thing I have to say is, if I could have the next slide, that we have experienced a series of extreme weather events over the last few years, which are so extreme that temperatures in many parts of the world have not exceeded the previous record held by human beings by 0.1 or 0.2 degrees centigrade, but often by 5 or 10 degrees centigrade. So I need to explain to you why these extreme weather events, which are occurring now around the Northern Hemisphere right now, and occurred last year around the Northern Hemisphere at the same time, and the cost in terms of loss and damage is probably in the region of $500 billion each year. And so we are looking at a very severe outcome from the use of fossil fuels and from the removal of forests around the world. And what I need to do is just explain, and I'll spend a few minutes doing this, why we have observed all of these extreme weather events right around the Northern Hemisphere over the past actually 4 or 5 years. Next slide is a graph, and I'm only going to show this one graph, but it's going back quite a few years to show the temperature rise that the whole planet has now seen as a result of fossil fuel burning and removal of forests. And what you see in black is the average for the whole planet. We are now close on 1.4 degrees centigrade globally above the pre-industrial level. And in 2015, and I was heavily involved in the negotiations, we all agreed that we should try our very best to stay below 1.5 degrees centigrade, because the result of exceeding that would be massively challenging to humanity. But you'll see in red what is happening in simply the Arctic Circle region up around the North Pole. If you take the Arctic Circle as a whole and their average temperatures year on year, shown in red, you'll see that the Arctic Circle is now at more than 3 degrees centigrade above the pre-industrial level. So the Arctic Circle region has far exceeded the 1.5 we were hoping to stay below. And I do have enough evidence to show that all of these extreme weather events we're observing are attributable to what is happening in the Arctic Circle region. If I could have the next slide. And I am running through these quite quickly, but happy to take questions. So we have a jet stream, which is a wind signaled in in white on the left-hand side, and it's a circular wind that blows around the planet in an anti-clockwise direction around the North Pole. And what we see is that wind is critical for keeping the cold weather, marked L, in the Arctic Circle region, and the hot weather, marked H, in the equatorial region. And we're sitting somewhere between the two. It's a very severe wind, and we know when it blows over the UK. On the right-hand side, we see what's happening as a result of the Arctic Circle warming up so quickly in the summer. The Arctic polar summer is just 3 months. And what happens today is that the ice that used to cover the whole of the Arctic Ocean, which sits around the North Pole, that ice is melted during the polar summer when the sun is up there around the North Pole. And the result of this is that the blue sea is soaking up sunshine, and this region of the planet therefore warms very, very rapidly. This region of the planet is now one of the warmer regions of the Northern Hemisphere. Astonishing to be able to say around the North Pole, we have one of the warmer regions around the Northern Hemisphere. And the result of this is the warm air is knocking the cold air down, forming these great fingers of cold air going down. But as cold air goes down, it has to be replaced by warm air coming up from the equatorial region. So we have this big transformation in the weather systems in the Northern Hemisphere, with hot air and warm air coming into regions that it hasn't experienced before. Now that schematic, on the next slide, I'm just showing you one slide which demonstrates what happened in North America during the last polar summer. During those about 3 weeks of the polar summer, this jet stream, marked again in white, this jet stream got severely distorted, and you'll see that running up the north coast of America, the jet stream got locked in place and then comes round and down into Central America. So Central America experienced very cold weather. Texas even experienced minus 16 degrees centigrade. Never experienced anything like it before. And along the west coast of America, the temperatures were in excess of 50 degrees centigrade in some places, and even in Canada, 49.9 degrees centigrade was observed. So what we see is all these extreme weather events are due to this massive disturbance caused by the warming of the Arctic Circle region. If you want to know, the climate scientists, and I put up my hand as one of those who have not predicted that this would happen anything like as quickly as it has happened. Now, of course, there are other consequences of the warming of the Arctic Circle region. Sitting in the Arctic Circle, next slide, please. And I think this is a composite figure. Yes, on the left-hand side, you see Greenland sitting during the polar summer in the blue Arctic Sea, and Greenland is now losing ice more rapidly than ever before. And so as that happens, the ice enters the ocean, and of course there's enough ice on Greenland to raise sea levels by 23 feet on average for the whole planet. In the middle of this, we see the meandering of that jet stream, which I've just described. And then on the right-hand side, the emission of methane occurring from within the land mass around the Arctic Ocean. There is permafrost. And on that permafrost, below the permafrost, there's a vast amount of methane trapped. Methane is 100 times more effective as carbon dioxide, as a greenhouse gas, as a gas that retains heat in the atmosphere. And so there's enough methane up there that would raise temperatures globally by 5 to maybe 8 degrees centigrade. This would be catastrophic. And we're beginning to see this happening explosively. Next slide. And we see explosions occurring. This was a picture taken by the Russian Academy of Sciences when a report came through from a little village on the permafrost. This is a picture of the permafrost region. A report came through from the village saying they heard loud explosion. And when the Academy investigated, they found this very large crater. It measures about about 70 yards across, about 80 yards deep. It's a big crater. Methane has just been released explosively into the atmosphere. Now that is a real risk going forward in time. So the result of all of this, next slide, is that we're also seeing massive potential for flooding. Of course, I've just mentioned as the ice on Greenland melts, sea levels go up. The first country that is likely to go underwater is Vietnam. On the right-hand side is the most recent estimate, based on what I've just told you, of flooding of Vietnam. And you'll see in blue about 90% of the landmass of Vietnam will be underwater, not by the end of the century, but by 2050. And Vietnam, the Mekong Delta forms this great series of paddy fields for rice growing, the biggest in the world, is the third biggest rice producer in the world. It won't be producing rice once it's flooded in this way. Next slide, please, and I'm virtually done. I am pushing forward, and this is the Climate Crisis Advisory Group that I chair and the Centre for Climate Repair at Cambridge, a big strategy to manage a safe future for humanity. The first case, deep and rapid emissions reduction, is absolutely essential. Today we're emitting about 40 billion tonnes of greenhouse gases a year into the atmosphere. We've got to bring that down as close to zero as we can, and in a short period of time as we can. Then we also need to remove excess greenhouse gases that are causing the problems I've just been describing to you. And then thirdly, in order to buy time, we're also trying to see how we can refreeze the North Pole regions during the polar summer and stop all of the effects I've just been describing to you from happening, to give us time to reduce emissions and to remove excess greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. So I've given you the scientific basis of where we stand at the moment. It's not a pretty story, but if we, humanity, can correct our ways and follow this procedure, then I believe we have a manageable future for humanity, but only if we follow this. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Sir David. I'm quite sure that members might have some questions for you, if you don't mind. Any member wishing to put a question to David? Councillor Lewis.
Hi, Sir David. Thank you so much for the presentation, which was incredibly comprehensive and terribly frightening. When I think we're faced with a problem like climate change, I think we as individuals can feel a sense of fear and a sense of despair. But fear and despair isn't going to really help us out here. In July 2020, the Council published a really strong and comprehensive report, a climate emergency action plan, which includes some of the things that we can do, things like becoming carbon neutral by 2030. But the question I had was, as councillors and as a council, what do you think is the most effective intervention we can make to prevent further climate change? And how can we best mitigate the effects of extreme weather for our residents?
Sir David.
Well, you've put your finger on very important questions that we need to answer. Each region of the world, each portion of our planet, we need people to be asking these questions and to be having a full answer to them. But of course, the responsibility lies heavily at government level as well. But what can we do locally? And I think what is critically important is to see that transport is available in a form that we don't get emissions of carbon dioxide. That means we must reduce car travel in our regions. We must increase public transport. Quite clearly, public transport per mile traveled per human being creates much less greenhouse gases, even if we're still using fossil fuels. So, and I frankly travel around on a bicycle whenever I can. Otherwise, I travel on trains. I never travel in a car. So I think it's critically important that we do all of that. Unfortunately, the built environment is the biggest part of our energy loss into the atmosphere, because we're burning fossil fuels to keep ourselves warm. And in this way, what we really need to focus on is how we can better insulate the homes in our regions. it is critically important that we save on energy usage. Energy efficiency of use is absolutely critical going forward. But frankly, I would need to give a much longer answer to your very, very important question. I think Newham is one of the councils that is setting an example to the rest of Britain, to the rest of England, and I congratulate you on that. And at the same time, we need to know that we must learn from each other. One council can learn from another. So best practice needs to be spread. So the final point I would make is talk to other councils that are facing the same challenges and deciding they want to go down this route. Your final point was in terms of how do we protect ourselves from the ravages of increased climate change, these severe weather effects, etc. And there, the answer has to be not just on a council stage, but not just on a national stage, but on a global stage. The whole world is responsible for what is happening. Our economic system has not recognized the importance of not polluting the planet. We have done this willy-nilly over hundreds of years, and now we're beginning to pay the price. We need all of us to recognize this enormous challenge. And it's a challenge. I'm quite old now, and I'm going to keep working until I collapse into a coffin. And the reason I'm saying that is because I have grandchildren, and my youngest grandchild is 2.5 years old. What sort of world will she face when she reaches 70 at the end of this century? What sort of a world are we bequeathing to the subsequent generations? And I'm very, very concerned about that.
Very much for that. Councillor John Morris, please.
Thank you for probably one of the most insightful presentations I ever had the pleasure of seeing, though it's slightly anxiety-inducing, but thank you nonetheless. I guess my question is, what forms of carbon capture and sequestration do you think has the biggest potential to be scaled up to meet the challenge that awaits us?
I have a slide, which is, can we go back to my slides if it's possible? Otherwise, I can just explain this. The oceans cover 72% of the world's surface. Next, go on through. Okay, no, it's not there, don't worry. So the oceans cover 72% of the world's surface, and we are doing very, very little, apart from damaging the oceans, to see what we can recover in the oceans. And very recently, we have discovered the amazing function that the big whales performed in the oceans. And I'm saying this because I believe that the piece of work we've initiated in Cambridge, and I've got a group of collaborators around the world working on this with us, this work is imitating the function that the whales used to have before we destroyed most of the world's ocean population. You will remember that 300 or 400 years ago, we began catching whales for their blubber. This was the first oil discovery. That's the slide. And what we have discovered is that these whales, this is a blue whale indicated here, the world's largest whale, they're down to 1% of the population we estimate 300 or 400 years ago. The blue whales eat krill about 300 to 500 meters below the surface of the ocean. They come up to breathe, and we've always known that, but there's something else that we completely missed, and it's going to be very obvious as soon as I say it. When a mammal is 300 to 500 meters below sea level, the pressure of the sea water closes their orifices, and these whales are therefore unable to defecate when they are that deep in the ocean. So when they come up, they do two things. They breathe, their lungs fill in with oxygen again, but they also release feces into the surface of the water. You get a pod of whales coming up together, you might get 3,000 square kilometers of ocean surface covered with a layer of whale feces, which is like fertilizing the land. Within a week, that whole area is green with phytoplankton. Phytoplankton's the initial foodstuff for the larvae that hatch from whales, from fish eggs. And within a month or two, you have something like 500 million fish in that region. So you've created an ocean forest. It also takes up a vast amount of carbon dioxide. So we're trying to go into a program we're calling marine biomass regeneration in order to regenerate the oceans of the world with fish, crustaceans, and mammals, including the whales, so that we can restore the fish population. Humanity can then use the fish for its own purposes. But the real thing is, these great green ocean forests will absorb enormous amounts of carbon dioxide. I think it could be up to 15 billion tons of greenhouse gases a year. So we're looking at projects that will take up more than 1 billion tons a year, but this is, for me, the project that is most promising, and this is what I'm putting most of my work into at the moment.
Thank you very much. Can I have Councillor Higgins, please?
Councillor Nate Higgins, Stratford Olympic Park. Thank you so much, David, for that presentation. It was very, very interesting. As a Green, one of the things that I get most frustrated about is at events like this where people ask, so as individuals, what can we do to make a change? So I'm not going to do that, but I'm going to ask you, why do you think the conversation is so often about personal responsibility and what individuals can do, when from so many of our perspectives, it's systems that are producing this runaway climate change? And if I'm being cheeky, there was a second question as well, which was, we've gotten to this position where the UK is a prosperous country through our climate emissions, largely, and now we're asking developing countries to not use technologies that they know exist that could help them get to this position because it will harm all of us if they do. How do you see that conversation working? What can the quote-unquote the West do to protect developing countries and their future prosperity during this conversation?
Well, two very important questions again. Thank you very much. I think the first question on personal responsibility, it may sound as if I'm going to disagree with you. I spent a lot of time in government. I see everything from a government point of view and from a diplomatic point of view as well. And it's critically important that governments operate in a way that they use the right strategies to switch us off from the dependence that we've developed on fossil fuels. Personal responsibility, however, is a key as well. And let me just give you an example of a group of people who have not illustrated the kind of personal responsibility that I think we need. The United States has never yet played a leadership role in the diplomatic challenge of climate change. When I was working with Tony Blair, we had George Bush Jr. in the White House, and I can tell you that in every piece of climate negotiations that I carried through with Blair, the White House absolutely redlined everything that meant real action. And we come to the present time, and you might have seen that the Senator Manchin has finally negotiated his way into a deal in which allowing the President of the United States to spend some trivial sum, I would say, but nevertheless it's a big sum by any standards, about $300 billion a year on managing climate change. What was holding the United States back? The lobby system. The US lobby is extremely powerful. Whether you talk about the gun lobby, the previous cigarette, can completely obviate the actions that are actually required through personal wealth creation. That, to me, is the biggest challenge we have. And it's true that not even our government is free of this kind of action. So I think personal action.
Mission. Councillor Penton. Yeah.
Chair, I'm a little confused.
Do you want to just update him, Chair? He's back again. Just update him.
Yeah.
About the time.
It is timing, rather, Councillor Penton.
No,
In that case, my question.
I can't hear anything.
He's with us.
Could the technical desk over there tell me what's happening, please? Oh, he's back.
Okay, I can hear you.
Right, thank you. We'll make this the last question, if you don't mind, Sir David, because of time, okay? Councillors already appreciated your speech, so if you could just answer the last question, please, very grateful indeed.
Right, so I think, I'm not sure if I heard the last question. The previous question I was answering, simply saying, we're all imitative in our behavior, and so personal behavior, if you change your behavior, other people will change their behavior too. And I think that is more important than most people really understand. Now, was there a question that I missed?
I don't think so. I think you've answered all the questions that was put to you. Can I thank you very much indeed? I think that was inspiring, and council members already appreciated it, so I don't know if they want to do it again, but I'm quite sure they will now. Thank you. And once again, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Right. I'm now moving to item 5, announcements by the Chair. I would like to inform Council that I attended the London Mayor's AGM on the 21st of July. I would also like to inform Council that my chosen charity for this municipal year is Hibiscus Housing Project. And if I can just give you a resume of what that entails, the aims and directives of the Hibiscus Housing Project is to provide high standard contained accommodation for frail elderly people, particularly those of Caribbean and African origin, who live or work in the London Borough of Newham. To provide housing and support commensurate with the individual needs of frail elderly people, particularly those of Caribbean and African origin, to enable them to live as independently as possible, and to provide home-from-home facilities in a culturally sensitive environment, enable each tenant to live in their home for as long as they want, even if their needs change and their care requirements increase. And they are based, we know of Hibiscus from another place, but this Hibiscus Lodge is situated on 1 Glenarvan Road in Stratford. I would also like to offer congratulations to our fellow councillor, Arit Chowdhury, and his wife on the recent birth of their firstborn child, a girl named Jana. We might want to appreciate that. And for my next announcement, please don't clap too loudly, okay? And that's for England women's football team. Okay. South Asian Heritage Month. Newham is celebrating South Asian Heritage Month, which commenced on the 18th of July, ending on the 7th of August. The celebrities, the rich history and diversity of South Asian people who have made Newham their home. Please look out at our website and join us if you can on one of the many events. I now move on to urgent motion. I have agreed to accept an urgent motion in accordance with the Council Procedure Rules, paragraph 14.4.6. This will be considered under item 15. Motion 5 proposed by Mayor Fiaz on extreme weather and tackling the climate emergency. I've also received an urgent motion from Councillor Higgins for Newham to support a Ukrainian Eurovision held in London, which I have refused in accordance with Council Rule 14.4.6, as I do not consider there are special circumstances to debate this motion. No, move on. Right, I refer to Rule 19, oh sorry, don't need that. Moving now to item 6, announcements by the Mayor, Roxana Fiaz.
Thank you very much, Chair. Similarly, I'd really love to take this opportunity to join the entirety of members of the full council tonight, no doubt, members of the public and officers, as well as the rest of the country, in celebrating the accomplishments of the English women's football team last night in their stunning and exhilarating win against Germany in the Euro finals. And weren't they just awesome and amazing in their history-making run as the roaring lionesses that they are? And I very much appreciate women that are roaring lionesses, especially. And talking about amazing women, I also wanted to add to the congratulations that the Chair of Full Council conveyed for the parenthood journey that Councillor Arik Chowdhury and his wife have now embarked on. I'm delighted to announce that Councillor Sasha Dasgupta gave birth to her baby this weekend, and she'll be spending time with her little angel. And I wish her well, enjoying the wonders and delights of motherhood. And I'm looking forward to being another adopted auntie in due course. So for all of our councillor colleagues that are taking some time out to immerse themselves in the wonder and the beauty of parenthood and of nurturing new life, I'm sure all of you will join me in wishing them all great love and good spirits and good health. So similarly, it's been a real privilege and honour to hear Sir David King this evening, and I trust everyone has been keeping safe and healthy despite the very humid conditions that we're still experiencing 2 weeks on, when we were facing the extremity of record-breaking temperatures of over 40 degrees Celsius. That week saw some unprecedented and alarming events, such as the fires which broke out across the country as the government declared an extreme heat red alert and warned of the potential serious illnesses and danger to life. Of course, we took the right step, and the Chair, may I commend you for the proper decision that you made to cancel our July full council meeting 2 weeks ago, and with tonight being scheduled to ensure this democratic chamber was able to convene before the August recess break. And today we meet as a grass fire in Leytonstone, just a stone's throw away from here, has been raging with over 60 firefighters battling the blaze with the support of 8 fire engines on the scene. It started on a dry area of grass, and as of 5 o'clock this evening, the fire was covering 4 hectares of land, which is the equivalent of 5.5 football fields. As Sir David outlined very clearly, this extreme weather is now the norm here and around the world. The climate emergency is well and truly with us, and it's affecting our health and our lives here and now. Our communities are paying the price, and we must act. And it remains ever more urgent that we step up our actions on climate emergency, and I will say more about that during the debate when we take the emergency motion. But what I will say now is the events over the past 2 weeks have graphically demonstrated why we will not be deterred in our action to reach our carbon zero. And in fact, we need to accelerate what we do and take steps now to protect our communities to the damage of climate change felt today, not least the communities here in Newham that featured in a really important report published by the Friends of the Earth that showed that communities of colour, not here only in the UK, but communities of colour around the world, are deeply, profoundly affected by climate emergency, and this is a social justice issue as well. In line with our commitments on climate emergency, we are also doing all that we can to protect and preserve the natural environment in Newham, and that includes protecting our biodiversity, and it includes what we do to cultivate our biodiversity in our parks and green spaces. So I'm delighted to announce on behalf of the Statutory Deputy Mayor, Councillor James Asser, that last week we have now achieved 6 green flags, our highest ever number here in this borough over several years. Plashet Park for the 7th year in a row, East Ham for the 2nd year, and for the first time ever, the following parks: Forest Lane Park, Royal Victoria Gardens, East Ham Nature Reserve, and also the Gandhi Chaplin Memorial Gardens. These 6 this year marks the halfway point to our Getting Stuff Done manifesto commitments of 12 by 2026. And it signals a huge achievement and credit to our parks team, which we brought back in-house the other year. And they've put in lots of passion, lots of time, lots of effort, and they should be thanked. And I trust that all of you will join me in thanking them formally tonight. And as we should be thanking also Councillor James Asser for his progress and leadership in his cabinet lead role. And all of them collectively, alongside Corporate Director Jamie Lee Blake, will be hitting the ground running, preparing for making submissions for next year's award, as they are as ambitious for our borough as all of us are. Moving on, I wanted to briefly shouldn't move on so quickly, but well done. Moving on, I wanted to briefly report on our ongoing work to extend the living wage, because support during this cost of living crisis remains at the top of our agenda. Last month, we launched an action plan for the Royal Docks to become a living wage place neighbourhood in collaboration with local partners, including Newham Citizens, the Royal Docks, as well as the Trade Unions Congress and the Living Wage Foundation. This follows a year of work with them all and, of course, the many businesses, small and large. Decent wages underpin our drive for fairer Newham, and I am pleased to tell colleagues that the Excel Centre is now a fully accredited living wage employer, joining Tate & Lyle, University of East London, and of course Newham Council as verified living wage employers. The action plan seeks to significantly increase the number of living wage businesses by 50% each year over the next 3 years, all very much linked to the manifesto commitment of designated and transforming the Royal Docks Enterprise Zone as the capital's first living wage neighbourhood anywhere in the capital. The 50% each year over the next 3 years target includes the work that we need to be doing to mobilise small and medium enterprises, because paying the living wage is not just about big businesses, it's not solely their concern. The action plan will target specific sectors, including hospitality and the construction industries. And of course, the right to a decent wage goes hand in hand with decent conditions and rights at work. That is why, as part of my announcements this month, I would like to show full council a new video we have made to mark the first year of our Employment Rights Hub. This was set up last year on the back of deep research that we had undertaken. We are a borough where some 40,000 of our residents aren't even being paid the nationally required minimum wage, let alone the living wage. And I'm immensely proud of the work that we have been doing under this administration to defend and protect and elevate the rights of workers in our borough, many of whom are amongst our most vulnerable members of our community. And it's all part of the repurposing that we have initiated of our Newham service, which is all about helping people every single day through hard times, particularly during this especially hard time of the cost of living crisis. The ELBA aims to inform and empower people to know their rights. And as an administration with the cabinet team, and I'm sure all councillor colleagues, you will join me in continuing to champion the rights to belong to a trade union and to organise, something which is key to a fair, successful and inclusive growth local economy. The Hub is but one strand of our wider work for Fairer Newham, and I would urge all councillors here to support this work. So, if the chair will allow, I hope you enjoy the video. Thank you.
Thank you.
Building a Fairer Newham means taking action to champion the interests of all our residents. That's why last year I launched the first ever Employment Rights Hub set up by a council here in the UK. It's a free and confidential service that you can access for support and information about the legal rights you are entitled to wherever you work. We want our borough to be a fairer and equal place, where you get paid a fair day's wage for a fair day's work. You can speak to someone at the Employment Rights Hub for all sorts of advice. For instance, if you've not been properly paid for the hours you've worked, or what to do if you've been unfairly dismissed, or if you need advice on how your boss needs to adapt your working day after you've returned from long-term sick leave. We've championed the rights of over 200 residents in the past 12 months alone.
I think that it's important for workers to know their rights, and the Employment Rights Hub teaches fairness. It teaches you what your rights are in your workplace.
I phoned them up and they were like, yeah, we can help you. And that was the first step. And I think the Employment Rights Hub, it helped me get on the right track to know what to do, to know what my rights are. If I didn't have this place, I probably just would have gone back to work and then maybe would have ended up in hospital.
Any sort of disputes that they may have can literally shake the whole world apart, and we are basically supporting you. We have your back, we're here to protect you. Even the simplicity of understanding my contract, understanding my payslips better, am I being taxed correctly, really gives a confidence and a boost to residents, giving them a voice.
In Newham, already too many people are working in insecure and low-paid work, making them vulnerable to exploitation. So if you're worried about your personal situation at work or have any question about your employment rights, friendly and professional advisors are here to help you with free and confidential advice. That's what building a Fairer Newham is all about.
Thank you very much, Mayor, for that. Thank you so much. Moving to item 7, announcement by the Chief Executive. I've been informed that the Chief Executive has no announcements to be made. Moving to item 8, updates from the Cabinet by Cabinet members. any member of Cabinet, Deputy Cabinet Member or Commissioner who wish to update Council will be allowed to speak for up to 3 minutes. There shall be no debate or questions allowed. Does any member of the Cabinet, Deputy Cabinet Member or Commissioner wish to speak? Councillor Ruiz.
Thank you, Chair. And sadly, I don't have a video, so you'll just have to listen to me. I'm really pleased to be able to update members. Thank you. Shows I'm getting shorter and shorter. On the significant progress that we have been making to our leaving care service. As you are aware, all of our children in care are our children. We are all corporate parents. In 2019, when I became a lead member, I realised that our leaving care service was not great. And having been challenged by a young person about whether it was good enough for my own children, I had to accept that it wasn't. In 2019, we invited Mark Riddell, who is the National Implementation Advisor for care leavers working from the Department of Education, to review our service. He spent 3 days with us, and that has helped us to progress and implement an ambitious plan. He returned earlier this year and said we had made remarkable progress. So, we have completely revamped the Corporate Parenting Board. We now have 3 young people who co-chair, and it is very much orientated to the needs and voices of young people. It now meets 6 times a year. All departments of the council are represented, as well as external stakeholders. And to ensure that we don't get into a time lag, all officers who attend have to be decision makers. Our virtual school, who have always provided an excellent service to our children in care and care leavers, now have 2 dedicated officers who work with our young people around the area of employment. We are above the national average for children going on to further and higher education, and our children achieve well in their GCSEs. But we needed to up the offer for those who want to work. They are now assisted in preparing CVs, interview practice, etc. We have developed a new local offer, co-produced with young people. This sets out what every young person can and should expect from us as a council, and this has greatly improved the consistency of service. All our young people now have a personal assistant who they can trust and who have their best interests. They keep in touch regularly and assist in a range of issues facing our young people. Working closely with colleagues in housing, we have now seen an improvement not only in the quantity but also the quality of accommodation offered. This week I'm delighted to say that we have started to occupy a bespoke 30-unit provision in Newham, 28 single flats and 2 doubles. Just like our own children who think that independence is the best thing, our care leavers are no different. But before they move on, we are committed to ensuring that they have the basic skills needed. Our young people can receive financial support up to the age of 21, but other support is offered unconditionally, much like we do for our own children. Last month, we saw the opening of the Cove. The official opening will take place later this year. The Cove was designed by our care leavers from start to finish and is very much a home from home, a place they feel safe, a place they can access services, and a place they can just chill. They already love it and are planning stuff that they would like to see happening at the Cove. Lastly, we have a permanent service management team who have driven the improvements from start to finish. We are not complacent. We know where further improvements are needed, but we are now a long way from the broken service I inherited in 2019. Thank you.
Are there any further updates? Thank you very much, Sarah Roos. Moving to item 9, I'm now moving to item 9, overview and scrutiny work program and future commissions. Councillor McAlmont has tendered his apologies for absence from this evening meeting. Therefore, there are no updates this evening on that item. Item 10, deputations. Can I inform the Chamber that there has been no request made to the Chief Executive for staging of a deputation under Rule 28, not 26 as the agenda of Part 4.1 of the Constitution. So I will move on to the next item. Item number 11. Are there any petitions by members? Councillor Verdi. Okay.
Good evening, Chair and members, Mayor, members of the public and the press. I have a petition from the residents of Aragon Road and Barking Road about the use of 151 to 153 Barking Road. There are some things which I've highlighted on here: the high level of antisocial behaviour, the late night drinking, the fighting, shouting, urinating in the street and on the walls of residents, alcohol being consumed inside and outside of the premises. There's no waste trade agreement, fire safety issues and fire alarm systems possibly not in operation. Is there a licence that's been approved, which we're not quite sure? Food hygiene, food packages on the street and on the pavements, parking on the pavements, door security issues, fire escape from the premises which is actually blocked with furniture. There has been a refusal on this premises, which I've got documentation of going back to 2020 as well, which I'll accompany with a petition here. So this is an operation that's been going on for a while, and it comes into operation on a Thursday evening that goes through to Monday morning.
You're making a long speech, Councillor.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you so much.
I've got it here, so...
It will be referred to the relevant department for progress. Are there any more petitions? I now move to item 12, members' questions. I can confirm the Chamber that there has been 7 questions received and accepted by the Chief Executive. These can be seen on pages 53 to 56 on the agenda published on the 20th of July 2022. There are questions from Councillor Steve Brayshaw, Alan Griffiths, Lewis Godfrey, 2 questions from Councillor Nate Higgins, and 2 questions from Councillor Ken Penton. To assist the Council in this process, we will introduce the following procedure in accordance with the Council Constitution. Each member to ask their question or to confirm as published. All members will be given a verbal response to their questions by the appropriate member. Under Council Procedure Rule 26.5, any supplementary question asked must arise directly out of the questions or reply, and members must phrase those questions appropriately and not seek to make a statement. Should members fail to heed this requirement, I will intervene to stop them. Question 1. Can I call upon Councillor Brayshaw to ask his question?
Okay, he's not here, so do you want to...
Oh, he's not here, is he? Okay, sorry. Right, question 2. I call upon Councillor Anne Griffiths to ask their question. Or in this case, his question.
Thank you, Chair. I haven't actually seen any paperwork with replies, which gives me a bit of a problem. But my question was about links with other councils and purchasing of heat pumps that are actually suitable for fitting in existing council homes.
Right, I understand that your question was published in the order paper, and there was a link to that, so it should have been seen. I don't know why you haven't. Can I now call upon Mayor Roxana Fiaz to respond to the question, please?
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much, Councillor Alan Griffiths, for your question. So, in the order paper that was published in advance of full council this evening, with regards to your specific questions, there's quite a lot of detail in terms of the response, but in broad terms, obviously we're working with a network of organisations, including UK 100 and C40 cities, and coordinating with other councils, specifically under the auspices of London councils, in ensuring that we, like all local authorities in the country, are provided the resources from national government to enable us to reach these really critical goals of net zero. And in the context of funding and financing a comprehensive retrofit programme, the retrofit of Newham stock as part of our strategic housing delivery ambitions is a evident priority and a key action to enable council to meet its net zero targets by 2045. And so that you're aware, because this is relevant to the elements of your question relating to existing central heating radiators and pipework and heat pumps, we adopt a fabric-first approach, and you've asked a specific question as to whether or not the council is positioned to procure heat pumps which are compatible with existing systems. So heat pumps can be compatible with existing central heating radiators and pipework for buildings where existing systems are compatible. However, it's important to bear in mind that heat pumps have a lower temperature output than gas boilers, which means that the radiators will give out less heat when working with heat pumps versus gas boilers. Therefore, a fabric-first approach is considered best practice in order to reduce the overall heating and energy demand from the home. And then you also asked a question in relation to heat pumps being competitive in all costs with gas boilers. And on that, a well-designed and well-installed heat pump will cost about the same to run as a gas boiler with current energy price cap as per April 22, because we're anticipating the revision and the update imminently, and purchasing and installing costs of heat pumps, however, are higher than gas boilers. And we will be concentrating, as I've mentioned earlier, on a fabric-first approach to reduce the overall heating demand and energy consumption of these properties as a priority in the first term. But no doubt, we anticipate that the technology underpinning heat pumps will enable the diminishing in costs, given the scale of work that we've got to do here in Newham in the context of a significant quantum of council housing stock in the borough. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Fiaz. Now moving to question 3. Call upon Councillor Lewis.
Sorry, he's got a supplementary.
Oh, you've got a supplementary, Alan.
Yes, briefly, thank you, Winston, and thank you, Roxana. I never knew your talents included such a detailed knowledge of building services engineering. You astonished me once again. I'm very happy with most of the reply, but there is one crucial bit missing. The prices of new technologies tend to come down when the manufacturers start believing that there's going to be a big increase in sales of their product. Is our work with other councils going to achieve that?
Thank you very much for the supplementary question, Councillor Alan Griffiths, and I'm so disappointed that you're disappointed, and that was not the intention with the response to your substantive primary question. Of course, as a council, given the exacting requirement that we've set out in line with the Climate Emergency Action Plan and needing to get to net zero by 2045, and similarly in the context of the work that's underway with the Green Budget, the council across the board through all manner of things, including procurement, will be looking at ways in which procurement can be leveraged to achieve the acceleration that we need to see. And that will be one area that council officers, led by the cabinet lead for finance and resources, will be undertaking as we work towards producing our first green budget, but also how all members of the executive, including the cabinet member for housing services, who has this principal responsibility for council housing stock and to meet the requirements of the strategic climate emergency intent as a cabinet member, he will also be tasked with working with his colleagues to examine what's available in the market. And you're right, the market drives the reduction in costs. So hopefully we'll see a reduction that will enable us as a local authority, given the constraints that we've been facing for 10 years plus as a consequence of austerity, but also given the inflationary pressures that we're facing, that we'll be able to find an optimum price point for us to be able to look into this very, very seriously.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Mayor. Moving to item question 3, I call upon Councillor Lewis Godfrey to ask his question.
Question 3 is tabled, please, Chair.
Okay. I now call on Councillor James Astor, Statutory Deputy Mayor and Cabinet Member for Environment and Sustainable Transport, to respond to the question, please. Thank you.
But you said there had to be a verbal response in your opening statement, didn't you?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. I've just been informed that you have to respond verbally to the question. Okay. That's verbally, is it? Okay. Yeah. Well, we're not going to have a discussion on that. Thank you very much indeed, anyway. Yeah, Councillor Lewis Godfrey, do you have a supplementary question?
I just want to say thank you to Councillor Asser for the very comprehensive answer to his question. I was very satisfied with it. I suppose my question is, going forward, what level of involvement can councillors have in this process? I know there are a number of councillors and colleagues who are very, very interested to help you develop some responses and to work with you to deliver this really important intervention.
For reference, Chair, I'm going to squat and be James Beckles for the next few minutes to save the walking up and down, if that'll make everyone happier. Happy to get involved with ward councillors. I think one of the things we're looking to do is the answer is we are looking at borough-wide, so it is going to affect all wards. One of the things we're looking at the moment is working with TfL about how we do that. Obviously, councillors will be aware in their patch where there are particular problems, because all of this work fits together with other stuff we're doing. So whilst it might be straightforward in terms of we're just delivering your area, other measures that might complement that I think would be useful. So other work we're doing, we'll be talking to you, and if councillors in their ward have particular issues or concerns about certain areas where we can start doing extra stuff, very happy to hear from you. And I know some councillors have already contacted me about particular issues. So again, as part of that, we're happy to work with you and look at particular problem areas where additional measures that might fit and complement that would go in is something we'll be welcome in doing.
Thank you very much indeed. We're now moving to question 4. I call upon Councillor Nate Higgins to ask his question.
Thank you, Chair. Many residents in Stratford Olympic Park are increasingly concerned and increasingly frustrated and angry to be waking up to disgustingly high levels of litter all over our community after events at the London Stadium and elsewhere. Areas of high footfall like Stratford Station, Stratford International Station, and the areas surrounding the London Stadium are particularly concerning. And the problem seems to be at its worst on weekends, where collection frequency may dip or may not be increased when it is needed most. To be clear, nothing excuses littering, but we can work to prevent it. What work, if any, has been done to monitor hotspots of bin overflows and litter pile-up across the borough, the speed of response to those overflows and pile-ups, and to adjust the location, size, quantity, and frequency of collection of those bins in response?
Councillor James Asser.
I'll just say the answer as published, because it's quite long, but in terms of following on from a similar answer I just gave, happy to work with local councils on kind of getting detailed knowledge of where there are particular problems, because you've seen in the answer one of the issues with that particular area is the multitude of different agencies and different land ownership, and we do have to enforce on that. So understanding where there might be problems which isn't related to us, it's other agencies have to deliver, would be useful to know. So happy to use local knowledge on that.
Councillor Higgins, do you have a supplementary question?
I do not, Chair. I do have a second question. if that's okay.
Just 1 minute, please. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Question 5.
Thank you, Chair. So since the council tax rebate scheme was announced, I've received more complaints about residents not receiving their rebate within timeframes communicated to them than about any other concern, and I'm sure I'm not alone in that. In Stratford Olympic Park, we know that residents are paying far and above the energy price cap because of the heating network, so this issue is particularly concerning. I want to recognise that the administration is doing some good work on challenging East London Energy's price gouging, and since asking this question, we had a great event last week that Mayor Fiaz was at, and I think I'm excited about what we see coming from that. And I am thankful to Mayor Fiaz that she recognises this problem. But many of my residents who pay some of the highest bills are still to receive their rebate. I recognise that officers are working incredibly hard to support those who need it, and this really is welcomed. But one specific complication seems to be the council's inability to approve some payments where either the bank account or the council tax account is in a joint name, and the other is not. Was this an anticipated problem? And if not, why not? And if it was, why wasn't this communicated to residents? If you have this mismatch in your joint names, your bill may take longer, because I think it's the expectations not being met that is the biggest problem here.
I call upon Councillor Charlene McLean, Cabinet Member for Resident Engagement and Resident Experience, to respond to the question.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Councillor Nate Higgins for his question. I hope you had a chance to read the comprehensive response on the published papers, but I'd just like to apologise for any inconvenience to residents who they may have felt that it took too long, but there is a detailed response there, and I hope that answers your question.
Okay.
But if you've got
Do you have...
Thank you. I had kind of been hoping that the answer would be read out because the papers were published like when full council started, so we may have been able to skim them, but a read out answer might help, if that's okay.
Okay, I will read the substantial answer to the question. Just bear with me and I'll get it up for you. Thank you. So, we are committed to supporting our residents through the cost of living crisis, as we know a number of residents are facing serious financial difficulties as household incomes in Newham become even more constrained in the face of high energy costs and inflation. This is exacerbating issues in poverty and inequality in Newham, which the Council is addressing through a range of strategies, including its inclusive growth and community wealth building agendas. Already, 1 in 4 adults in Newham are over-indebted and living on credit, and we know that low-income households will spend about 11% of their income on energy compared with high-income households who spend on average 4%. As you've pointed to, Mayor Fiaz and the Council are acutely alert to the additional pressures that households in the Stratford Olympic Park ward are experiencing because of the energy supplied by East London Energy to residents living there. And you will be aware of the actions that Mayor Fiaz is undertaking on this matter and advocacy to support Newham residents living in the Stratford Olympic Park ward. As set out in the briefing sent to all members on the 17th of June and in the update briefing sent by the Chief Executive recently, the government's council tax rebate announced in February 2022 has been complex for all local authorities to deliver in a speedy way. That's why representations have been made to the government via the LGA and London councils, as well as being raised by members of Parliament. The £150 non-repayable rebate for households in England applies to those in council tax bands A to D, with some exceptions for households in band E, properties who have specific disabilities. Notwithstanding the challenges the council tax rebate has presented, the council has, in the period since the government's announcement on the 3rd of February 2022, undertaken the following. Purchase software to support the administration and payment of both the council tax rebate and discretionary fund. Completed testing of the identification of eligible households and payment processes to ensure that these are effective and expenditure is currently accounted for within the council's financial systems. A significant amount of time has been required to ensure the right money goes to eligible households, as the council has to also evidence the required allocation of the council tax rebate for reconciliation purposes with the government. This has been additionally complex because, 1, it's the first time that councils have been required to do this, and 2, it has required the careful and correct coordination of 4 separate IT applications involved in the processing of the payments in Newham to ensure no wrong payments are made. The Council is working towards all payments of credit to relevant council tax accounts to be made by the end of August 2022. The rule says all payments need to be made by the 30th of September 2022. There's more. Initial focus has been on getting payments processed to the 49,658 potentially eligible households paying their council tax via direct debit. The council is required to verify the name on the bank account for the direct debit matches that of the liable person in the household, and a number of accounts have failed this test. This could be where someone, such as a relative, is paying on behalf of the liable person, or it may indicate a landlord paying council tax who would not be entitled to a payment. Additionally, some direct debit households have a payee who resides outside the borough, so extra checks regarding eligibility needs to be done. And in Newham, this applies to some 750 households. Overall, the council is dealing with a large volume of cases that fail this validation. Between 20 to 40% of energy rebate applications are failing to match. We are intending to credit these payments to the residents' council tax account, and residents will be written to be advised of this. In the Stratford Olympic Park ward, E20 area, as of the 11th of July 2022, because this question was at the previous council, the council has paid 1,768 residents with an additional 1,210 households contacted, encouraging them to claim their rebate. I can give you updated figures after this published answer. Of those previously contacted, 178 households haven't responded as yet, and 260 are being processed. Some 240 households may not be eligible as they don't appear to meet the criteria, but these are being checked. 531 properties are council tax band E to H, so are mostly not eligible, and for our residents in bands E to H who are struggling, there is a discretionary scheme being launched weekend commencing 18th of July, and it has been launched by the council's Our Newham Money Service, and information about that will be promoted via social media and the council's website, and details are on the website. So that's the published answer in the order paper. Thank you.
Do you have supplementary?
I do, if that's okay. And thank you so much. I wouldn't have asked if I knew it was that long, but thank you so much. My supplementary was just, do we have a timetable for those who will receive the credit to their account, when they'll receive those letters and when they should be expecting the credit, and how that interacts with the billing cycle? Because if it's a credit, then they only really get the discount after the credit when their money isn't taken out normally. Does that make sense? Let me re-explain. The credit will be applied, but people won't actually feel the benefit of that credit until their next bill, because their next bill will be discounted to take account of the credit. So I'm just wondering about all the timelines of this, so when people will actually feel the benefit. Thank you.
So in answer to your question, the bill will be recalculated, and it will be communicated to residents as soon as we discover that they failed the test. They will be written to let them know. But I'm happy to give you a more detailed answer if that doesn't answer your specific question. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Now moving to question 6, and I call upon Councillor Ken Penton to ask this question.
Hi, Chair, thank you. In its manifesto, Newham Labour committed to deliver 500 more cycle hangers over the next 4 years. Can the Cabinet Member for Environment and Sustainable Transport confirm what the delivery strategy for these hangers will be, including how they will be phased in and when the current waiting list for cycle hangers will be cleared?
And that member is Councillor James Asher, Statutory Deputy Mayor and Cabinet Member, Environment and Sustainable Transport, to respond to that question.
Yeah, just to add slightly to the published answer, which as it stands on the order paper, we are working through that programme of detail at the moment. We've got planning meetings at the moment, including, as you'll have seen, bids in terms of capital funding to support that. So there'll be some additional information starting to emerge, which councillors will be able to see as we move into the autumn.
Councillor Penton, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Just a very short one. Thank you for that, and I'll read the detailed answer and the supplementary information with great interest. Just wondering if you can confirm whether the additional 500 cycle hangers will be a minimum, not a maximum, and whether we're talking to other councils who've managed to bring the cost for residents down to see whether anything we can learn from them to reduce the cost of cycle hangers for the benefits of Newham residents.
In terms of maximum, minimum, everything that went into the manifesto was based on a realistic assessment of what we thought we could comfortably deliver without making promises that we weren't able to deliver. My general view is that that's always our minimum, and if we can deliver more than that, we should aim to. Over 4 years, there was always a chance we can find additional funding and support. Officers are always on my beg, borrow and steal order to go out and find further grants, support, funding where we can. We don't know what's going to open up over the next 4 years, and we always look for that. Funding always remains an issue with these things. In terms of talking to other councils, we always, I have regular contact with my counterparts around London. We share a lot of ideas and communicate all the time in terms of seeking additional information, and a lot of people come to us and talk about our experiences as well. So there's always that conversation going on. So yes, the ambition is always to try and overachieve.
Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Penton? Supplementary. That was a supplementary. Forgive me. Okay. Thank you very much indeed.
I do have an additional question there.
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
Would you like me to ask that?
Yeah.
Can the Cabinet Member for Environment and Sustainable Transport confirm whether the UK Government's refusal to come up with a multi-year funding package for Transport for London is impacting on the funding available for Newham's cycling and active travel plans?
Answer is published, but in short, yes, definitely. I suspect Councillor Penton has a supplementary in which I may wax a bit lyrical on this.
Carry on.
I do have a supplementary. I'll try not to be too long with it, but...
That would be good.
But yeah, I think I would request that if Newham Council at all possible can look at capital investment on its active travel infrastructure. We've heard earlier on from Sir David King about the difference it can make about reducing greenhouse gas emissions and tackling the climate emergency. We know we're in the most polluted borough in the UK in returns of air pollution. There's a whole host of other benefits on congestion, tackling low-cost transport for our residents. But residents, all the evidence suggests that they won't do it without good, high-quality cycling and walking infrastructure. And so I hope that, as well as Councillor Assa, the rest of the Cabinet members who are here, when you're considering what the capital assets allocation should be for investment in infrastructure, you'll regard cycling and active travel infrastructure as a priority for the reasons I've just outlined. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. I mean, I agree with the point you made. The funding situation from TfL has been extremely difficult for all councils. The government are playing games with Transport for London. The previous Mayor Boris Johnson, who likes to talk about his mayoralty, doesn't like to talk about the fact he changed the funding agreement, which removed the capital funding from central government relying on fares. It's the only capital in the world that does this, which is why TfL are in such an appalling situation, because once you have a pandemic where no one's travelling, you've got no fares. They have been messing around, and the last funding settlement was a fortnight. We can't deliver projects in any way, shape and form with that kind of uncertainty, and it's affecting all councils, and we're seeing lots of cuts and difficulties because of it. In terms of your point around capital funding, we have gone out and sought additional funding, which is why we applied for the Levelling Up funding. We are looking at capital funding at the moment for other projects, working through this. So we are looking for sources of funding wherever we can, including capital if we can. Obviously there's, the council has huge issues to balance budgets like all councils do because of the funding settlements we get from government. But yes, this is a priority piece of work, and we're looking to find resources wherever we can. But we do hope, and certainly we're through London councils working and with the City Hall working to try and lobby government to actually deliver a proper funding settlement. And this is a cross-party thing actually, because boroughs run by other parties are having exactly the same problem now to deliver projects, and it's damaging the London economy. And if you damage the London economy, you damage the national economy. It is now vital they come to a proper settlement, and hopefully after they finish electing a new Prime Minister, we may actually get one, but I'm not holding my breath.
Thank you very much. That brings us to the end of members' questions. I'm now moving to item 13, questions by the public. There are no questions from members of the public. Item 14, speeches from members in accordance with Part 4, Rules of Procedure of the Council's Constitution, paragraph 18.4.1. I have agreed to the speech from Councillor Marion Daru on Manor Park Public Summer School, Politics Summer School. As we have received Councillor Daru's apology for this evening, I have agreed to defer this speech to the next meeting. I will now move to the next item, which is item 15, motions. I'm now moving to 4 motions were originally received, as set out in the agenda papers at page 57 to 64. I have received notice that the following proposers wish to withdraw their motions. Motion 1, from Councillor Pushpa Makwana on the menopause in the workplace. Motion 3 from Councillor Arik Chowdhury on facial recognition surveillance, and motion 4 from Councillor Simon Rush on elections bill or home or vote, resident-based voting campaign, council model. I've also accepted the urgent motion proposed by Mayor Roxana Fiaz, motion 5, which is detailed on your order paper on the supplementary agenda. Therefore, there will be 2 motions to discuss at council for this evening, motions 2 and 5. Point of order.
Thank you, Chair. So this is in reference to the Eurovision motion that you referenced that you rejected earlier. the clause of the Constitution says that, you know, with the permission of Chair of Council, a motion concerning urgent business may be submitted without the required notice. That clause doesn't actually reference any ability to revoke permission. And I was notified by officers last week that permission had been granted for this motion, and then was then told later that permission had been, that a change of mind had happened. I was wondering what your view was on whether that clause allowed for that, and secondly, how, considering that the bidding process is likely to be complete or close to complete by the time of next full council, how it might be considered that this business isn't urgent.
So this is the bit when we spoke about office. This is the bit when we spoke about offices, that there is no some of it, so I hope you want to, you'll just refer that and you can say those two paragraphs.
Okay, right. I refer to Council Rule 19.1 and do not consider this to be a point of order, as there is no breach of the rule or unlawfulness. We understand that this application is for a city to host. If London is successful, it is at that point Newham would lobby for Newham to host the event. Motion 2. I call upon Councillor Nate Higgins to propose their motion, which is outlined on page 59 to 61 on the published agenda. But before you do so, I understand you wish to amend your motion. You have 5 minutes, Councillor Higgins.
Thank you, Chair. Before I start my proposal, could you confirm whether you intend to take my amendments as 3 separate amendments in terms of the... I understand that we're combining the debate between the motion and the amendments, but I submitted 3 separate amendments and it's unclear to me how the vote will happen.
No, I don't think I'm going to do that, okay?
Okay, sorry, I have a second point of order then.
Right.
So clause 17.4 of the Constitution says, usually only one amendment may be discussed at a time and no further amendment may be moved until the amendment under discussion has been disposed of. But the chair may allow 2 or more amendments to be discussed but not voted on together if it will help business to be dealt with more efficiently. To me, that's pretty clear that you can't combine the votes for amendments. I submitted 3 separate amendments.
Right, I take you to 17.6 on page 125, 70.5 on page 125 of the Constitution, and it reads, usually only one amendment may be discussed at a time, and no further amendments may be removed until the amendment under discussion has been disposed of, but the chair may allow 2 or more amendments to be discussed but not voted on. Together, it will help business to be dealt with more efficiently. So that's the ruling.
So there will be separate votes on the amendments then? Is that the decision?
You're taking one, you're going to allow 1 vote on all these 3 amendments.
Right. We're going to allow 1 vote on all 3 amendments taken at one time.
Okay. In order to help business, I'll not stress the point too much, but I do think that that's a breach of the Constitution. So to start the proposal of my motion, I actually first wanted to offer solidarity with Mayor Fiaz against some of the things that we've seen in the media from the GLA in regards to the Silvertown Tunnel. I understand that this motion might provoke further similar things going on in the media, and I don't want that to happen, and I don't think that what has happened is fair. The mayor has every right to represent the views of Newham residents on the Silvertown Tunnel, and hopefully if this motion passes on the MSG sphere as well. and I would hope that we don't see more of what we've seen in the media in this past week. So I put this motion partly because I thought it was really important to reiterate the cross-party opposition in Newham to the MSG sphere. The local representatives might have changed, but the opposition hasn't. We're united in the belief that the MSG sphere is wrong-headed and must not be built. And I think there's a real risk of democratic deficit. Every single local representative of Newham and Stratford and the surrounding area opposes the sphere, except for Sadiq Khan, and we don't know his views because he's rightfully kept quiet on that while we wait for the planning process to go through. While it may have been improper for Sadiq Khan to get involved up to this point, it really is now time that he picks a side. Is he on the side of local people who oppose this sphere, or on the side of unaccountable business who want to see it built? You know, Newham is a borough where we have the Silvertown Tunnel being built against our wishes, where we have London City Airport imposed against the wishes and needs of local residents, where we've seen Newham City Farm closed despite widespread opposition in the local community. And this year's election saw a record low turnout. The vast majority of residents in that election, though, voted for candidates opposed to the sphere, and that was the case in the previous election as well. Why would people vote when it seems that in many ways the views of local residents are not as important as the wishes of what seem to be higher powers? I want to take a moment to thank the Labour colleagues who have put forward an amendment to this motion, and to confirm that we will be supporting this amendment. There is a drafting error in the original motion, and you know, I'm a new councillor, it's a learning process, and I appreciate the support being given to make the motion better rather than using it as a reason to oppose the motion as a whole. We would ask in return that you consider supporting our amendments, though. We think that without them, that the motion might end up without teeth. You know, without the Green amendments, the motion just calls for a letter to be sent opposing the sphere. It doesn't ask Sadiq Khan to do anything specific. And that's why we'd like you to support particularly Amendment 3 that calls for action to be taken under the law that Sadiq Khan, the power that Sadiq Khan has to stop the sphere being built. And also I want to thank Labour colleagues for the amendment on councillors not putting themselves in a position that risks their position on certain committees. I think that's really important as well. And again, being a new councillor, it's a learning process. Ultimately, I think we just, as a borough, we cannot accept a situation where residents are being told to install blackout blinds or where lives might be put at risk at Stratford Station because of a proposal that isn't suitable for the community it's being put onto. And I really do understand that there are political sensitivities between the leadership of the GLA and the leadership of Newham Council, as we have seen in the media this week. And I really don't wish to add to that, but I do think it's important that, you know, that this motion passes and that the cross-party opposition to the sphere being built is resolved. And thank you, colleagues, for listening, and I hope you do support this motion.
Do we have a seconder to the motion? Thank you. Anyone to speak against the motion? Therefore, we'll move to the vote on the amended motion.
I'm sorry, Chair.
Okay.
I don't want to speak against, but I do want to make a contribution to the debate. So what is the procedural provision in that regard? Could you advise, please?
Allowed, yes. Carry on.
Thank you very much. Okay, so bear with me because I'm going to be carrying quite a lot of device equipment because there's some specific things that I just want to draw colleagues' attention to, and hopefully I did that seamlessly. Look, firstly, I think it's right and it's to be welcomed that the minority group Green Party are putting on record their endorsement of the sustained campaign against this MSG in this borough over the last 4 years by the administration, and as the portfolio lead for inclusive economy and housing delivery, which covers planning policy as well. I very much welcome that recognition and acknowledgement alongside the acknowledgement of ward councillors in what was the Stratford and Newtown ward, Councillor Terry Paul, who's not with us this evening, Councillor Joshua Garfield, and former Councillor Narissa Osai. And no doubt this is something that is similarly embraced by the new Stratford Councillor, Councillor Sabia Kamala as well, and obviously the democratically mandated and elected representatives on the LLDC board that sit on the planning committee of the LLDC, should I say, Councillor Rachel Tripp. I just wanted to throw into the debate the importance of us in the context of planning matters being one, really precise, hence the amendments put forward by myself and seconded by Councillor John Whitworth, which I trust we will come to. And specifically, I think of the amendments that you've submitted, it's the Amendment 3 that I'm just slightly concerned about, and the reason being, not because I don't agree its principle and its intent, because it very much echoes what we have been calling for, certainly politically, as the mayor of this administration re-elected, but also what has been put forward in terms of the Local Planning Authority of Newham Council's submission formally to the LLDC as endorsed by Newham's own Strategic Development Committee. It's just, I would want to seek, and I think it's right that we seek officers' advice on the reference that you make to Article 6, 1 of the Town and Country Planning, Mayor of London Order 2008. And I think in the interests of just ensuring that everyone's fully appraised, because planning policy in the best of the world, as much as you immerse yourself in it over years, it can still be very complex. But the specific 2008 article that you refer to, I'm going to read it out. So the Mayor's powers to direct refusal of a PSI application. Now, a PSI is an acronym for Potential Strategic Importance. And the Mayor's power to direct refusal of an application which is deemed potential strategic importance, which is the article that you're referring to in your amendment, states that a PSI application would be A, contrary to the spatial development strategy or prejudicial to its implementation, or B, otherwise contrary to good strategic planning in Greater London. And in light of the lack of clarity, I will be hesitant for full council, particularly those councillors that are on planning committees, to sign up to the amendment as set out, because it may not be the Article 6.1, and I wouldn't want for a letter that we would be sending, which we would be publishing, which I would be inviting all councillors, if my amendment was debated and subsequently approved, to be signing up to. I would hate for that to be incorrect, because I think it's always important in matters of planning that we're really precise and correct. So what I would suggest, if Councillor Nate Higgins, you were agreeable, perhaps amend Amendment 3 to request that he considers refusal, because the other thing, the Mayor of London, in his powers, isn't, and in the context of planning, does not invite commentary on planning applications, that he makes the ultimate determination. Now, I think it's really important that we lobby any Mayor of London and we present our case in advocacy of our residents, but perhaps
Mayor,
we can,
forgive
outside of
me.
this meeting,
Forgive me,
discuss an
Mayor.
appropriate form that would satisfy all of us in terms of our need to be precise and not compromise the integrity of councillors.
Yeah, sorry about that, but
It's okay.
we need to amend standing orders for about half an hour in order to complete the business on the agenda. Could we have someone to move that, please? Thank you. Jen Lofthouse, Godfrey, Councillor Godfrey. Half an hour. Okay. We have a second in Lewis Godfrey. Do you agree to that? Those in favour, please show. Thank you. Those against? I think that is carried. Thank you very much. Mayor, you may continue. Are you through?
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I forgot to vote as well. So I guess, and I don't know whether this is permissible, because I appreciate the Amendment 3 in particular is a very important one for you, Councillor Nate Higgins, in light of the focus you want to amplify on this, notwithstanding, you know, for me, this represents an endorsement of what we've been doing. And on that point, I'll no doubt in September or later this year make a comment about that more broadly. That aside, if I may, Chair, is there any provision for myself and Councillor Nate Higgins to confer over the wording of this proposed amendment at this stage, or is that not possible?
Yes, I think we need to clarify that, because I was wondering if you make an amendment to his amendment, or you want to come to an agreed position on it.
May I suggest something?
Yeah.
May I suggest that so the Mayor needs to discuss with Councillor Higgins, because she's going to move an amendment. We know she's going to move an amendment. Does the Council want to vote on his amendment, and then she can put in her amendment the new suggestion that he has?
What has been put to me at the moment is if the two parties would like to discuss the matter, because the Mayor is put an amendment, and is that amendment being put to your amendment? So if you can have a discussion so that you can clarify the position on this item. Would you like to do that?
If that's agreeable to you, Chair, within the time that we have, and I know there's lots of other business.
Yeah.
So what we can do, just bear with me, if the Council doesn't, because they need to agree that, and this is taking up time, so what you can do is take item 17, pause this agenda item, go to item 17 whilst they're negotiating that. Is that okay?
Hold on.
Could you just make sure the Council agrees? You don't want them to leave, don't get them to leave, they shouldn't be going. Do you want to do that? Do you see what I'm saying? Make that suggestion.
Is that going to work?
So do you want me to speak? Would it help? Because that's going to take a while for them to redraft it.
Yeah. Members, we're in a position to which we don't normally find ourselves, but what it wants to suggest, if we can move to the either item on the agenda while the two parties discuss their item at the moment, and I think this will save us some time. Yeah. And we will move to item 17 with your permission. So those in favour with my suggestion, please show. Those against? No one against. Therefore, could we now move to item 17, review of the gambling licensing policy. Review of the gambling license policy 2022 to 2025 report. This can be located on the council papers at pages 65 to 143. Councillor Jane Lofthouse, you have 5 minutes to present this report to council.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Councillor Jane Lofthouse. The gambling licensing policy review would normally have been presented by the chair of the current chair of licensing, but Councillor Tony Wilson. But unfortunately, she's not able to attend. I did, however, attend some of the committee that prepared for it. The Gambling Act 2005 regulates the provision of gambling in Great Britain and makes local authorities responsible for licensing premises within their areas, requiring them to adopt and publish a statement of gambling policy at least every 3 years, hence the urgency tonight. We'd like to thank our officers and the past Chair of Licensing, Councillor Neil Wilson, for their diligence in preparing the 6th edition of Newham's gambling licensing policy, which now comes to Council for approval. The 3 licensing objectives under the Act are: 1, preventing gambling from being a source of crime or disorder, being associated with crime or disorder, or being used to support crime. 2, ensuring that gambling is conducted in a fair and open way. 3, protecting children and other vulnerable people from being harmed or exploited by gambling. Newham, as the licensing authority, is bound and to some extent restricted by the 2005 Act and by statutory guidance from the Gambling Commission. We must aim to permit gambling premises and must modify the impact of gambling, especially in terms of the 3 objectives. However, we may not aim to prevent it. We are also not able to control the clustering of gambling premises, nor deal with antisocial behaviour and problem drinking not necessarily associated. Neither can we be influenced by moral objections to gambling per se. This policy contains the principles by which Newham processes gambling premises licensing applications. In preparation for this edition, we conducted 2 consultations, 7th of March and 1st of April. Only 1 response was received from solicitors representing the gambling industry. In the main, we were able to counter requested changes, largely on the grounds of the link between poverty and gambling vulnerability. There are, though, no significant changes to the 2019-2022 policy, which is still robust and fit for purpose. However, a reform of gambling laws, as promised in the now much overdue government white paper on gambling, is greatly needed, especially given the mounting concern over addiction and children's exposure to gambling. In Newham, the number of premises has stayed stable over the past 3 years, with a slight increase in gaming centres and corresponding decrease in betting shops, a trend seen nationally. However, Newham ranked 14th out of 365 local authority areas in Great Britain for its number of premises. This is particularly of concern because of the high correlation between larger numbers of gambling premises and poverty and deprivation. Apart from this policy, a wider one-council approach to gambling would be followed, looking at joint working to address antisocial behaviour and street drinking outside premises. Over the next 3 years, we will focus in particular on the licensing objective of protecting vulnerable persons from being harmed or exploited by gambling. Working with partners, including public health, we'll gather precise and more robust data with a view to updating our local area profile, which applicants use to develop their risk assessments and controls. In the light of this evidence, we will overhaul the gambling policy in the next review. Furthermore, working on a project with public health, we will arrange health promotion signposting to local services offering addiction support and a toolkit including multilingual posters. We will also enhance our inspection regime of premises in partnership with the police and community safety. This approach will build on the strong drive by Newham to ensure robust regulation around gambling, noting our success in reducing the maximum stake on fixed odds betting terminals from £100 to £2 and the reduction of prizes from £500 to £100. In conclusion, the policy reinforces our commitment to make Newham a pleasant and safer borough to live and work in. We will continue to work with our partners, such as the police and the Gambling Commission, to ensure that gambling is fair and open and kept free from crime, and that it protects those who are underage or vulnerable from being harmed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Raj Patel to second.
Thank you, Chair, the Mayor, Chief Exec, and fellow colleagues and officers. Excuse me. I second and actually welcome the report. It's been long overdue, and the comments that were made by my fellow colleague, Councillor Jane Lofthouse, are highly concerning. The report is deeply concerning. I represent Green Street East Ward, where there are many issues linked to gambling and ASB, and how that's also linked to issues like domestic violence, which are highly concerning. I speak to residents on a daily basis about the issues that pertain from licensees. And I am deeply concerned, as mentioned, and I refer to the background, particularly 3.5, Part 5 and 6. We do live in a borough which is deprived, and I'm not going to take the full 3 minutes, Chair, because I saw fellow colleagues actually nodding off earlier, and it might put them to sleep even further hearing my voice. But I would say that taking advantage of vulnerable residents and any licensees that are done blatantly doing that is not acceptable. I do sit on the licensing committee, which is restricted in its powers, unfortunately, due to central government legislation and regulation. But the exploitation and taking advantage of our residents is unacceptable, and it will not be tolerated in this borough. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor, oh, sorry. Does any other councillor wish to speak on this item? But I understand, yes, Councillor Keeling. Thank you.
Councillor Danny Keeling, Stratford Olympic Park. The Green Group commend the large amount of work that's gone into this report. It's a very comprehensive report, and it was very well put together. We are also concerned, as said by Councillor Jane Lofthouse, about the poverty correlation and the amount of establishments within the very large amounts of poverty. And just a reminder, we will have a corporate responsibility to keep the children safe in our borough, and that you will certainly have the backing of the Green Group.
Thank you. Any other member wish to speak? Councillor Penton.
Hi, yeah, just Councillor Ken Penton, Maryland Ward. Just very briefly to again welcome the report and reiterate. I mean, Newham's got a very proud record of tackling problem gambling. We know the impact it has on our borough, the fact that betting shop companies target has been laid out, the poorest boroughs and the correlation between them. And it's actually the fact that Newham took a stand on this, that the law was changed nationally, and that's something that everyone, including the councillors here who worked on that, can be proud of. It's also the reason why the betting shop position in Newham has been stable over the last 3 years, not grown as the population has grown. So I just want to place on record my welcoming of this report and the fact that we do desperately need the government to come up with a new piece of legislation to tackle the problem of problem gambling in Newham and across the country for all the reasons that have been laid out by the councillors in terms of addiction, in terms of the impact on people suffering from the cost of living crisis, that the people can't afford to put their money in, particularly in fixed op betting terminals. So there's a whole host of reasons why we should welcome this report, but also remember the fact that we're in a better position than we were 10, 12 years ago because of the campaigning work that Newham councillors in this room and before, and others who served on the council before me, actually talk. So I'd like to fully endorse this motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Any other member wish to speak? If not, Councillor Lofthouse, you have the right to reply and 3 minutes to do so. Thank you very much indeed. We now move to the vote. The recommendation is that Council approves the adoption of the final version of the Council's Statement of Gambling Policy attached at Appendix A of the report, and that be published following the full Council meeting according to the regulations. We now vote. All those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you very much indeed. Those against, do the same. Any abstentions? Can I declare that is carried? And thank you very much for that. Right. I'm being advised is what we do next. That is, if the Mayor would like to respond to the discussion that you have with Councillor Keating, as if we should debate that now or leave it until after the other item. What would you like to do?
Whatever is your wish.
Okay. Right, we'll go back to motion 28. A little bit complex at the moment, so forgive us on that. Mayor Fiaz, would you like to report back on the discussion which you have with Councillor Keating as to whether you move and... See?
Councillor Higgins.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Higgins. Was it Councillor Higgins? Sorry for that. Yes. If you would like to report on that, and if we were to vote on your amendment, or do we go back to Councillor Higgins' amendment?
I will report back, Chair. So, Chair and colleagues, following a short period of discussion, Councillor Nate Higgins was agreeable to the following amendment of his Amendment 3 to read as follows, and he subsequently sent on to the Chair of Full Council, the Monitoring Officer and myself, and I also, by way of reply, to agree and concur, included Clerk to Full Council Committee, Officer Joy George. So the agreed amendment to the new Amendment 3 as published in tonight's order paper to read, to ask Mayor Fiaz that any letter sent by her to Mayor Khan at the request of this motion is informed by new local planning authority officers' advice concerning Article 6.1 of the Town and Country Planning Mayor of London Order 2008. It makes sense in planning terms, and it just safeguards everyone.
Yeah, I think this is a question which the monitoring officer has to address, as it's now become extremely complicated. So we'll try to see if we can work through it. Asmat, would you like to relate to council what the process is at this time?
Thank you. It is on. I was just trying to signal to make sure it's on. Thank you, Chair, and good evening, councillors. So at the outset, the Chair advised Chamber that we will not be voting on the amendments, the 3 amendments put forward by Councillor Higgins, that we would do it as one whole amendment. A discussion has now taken place with Madam Mayor and Councillor Higgins to amend his Amendment 3. Due to what I just said earlier, that amendment will be incorporated in your whole motion. Hopefully people are following me so far. So what I have advised, Chair, is that your new Amendment 3 becomes part of Madam Mayor's amendment that she wishes to put forward, because the council will need to vote on your amendment.
Is that clear?
If I may just ask procedurally, if I may clarify. So if I've understood correctly, the 3 amendments submitted by Councillor Nate Higgins are being taken as one amendment in line with the Constitution.
Yeah.
And there is one issue with one portion of that new one whole amendment, which was the original Amendment 3 submitted, as set out on the published order paper, page 17. There's been a discussion. There's an agreement that that will change to what I read out. That becomes the new amendment to his original substantive motion. Is that right?
So I understand that Amendment 1 and 2 still applies. So therefore, that Amendment 3 will become part of the overall, his amendment. Hence, the advice that maybe you want to take his Amendment 3 into your amendment, because the council will need to vote on his amendment to the substantive motion.
Okay. So, if I may, forgive me, the Amendment 1 in the amendment submitted by Councillor Nate Higgins on page 16 is a minor correction of a typo. Amendment 2, it virtually reflects a point in the amendment that myself and Councillor John Whitworth submitted, and then both of us are satisfied with the amended Amendment 3, and you're suggesting to, possibly as an option, that the amendment that myself and Councillor John Whitworth submitted, we also include the revised Amendment 3, because that will be voted on separately in a moment. And what happens to this?
So, going back to the advice, sorry if it's unclear. So Councillor Higgins has put in an amendment to his motion. We need to vote on that amendment. Within that amendment, he has 3 recommendations. So when the council votes on his amendment, they will be voting on all 3 as one vote. So if the council agrees to accept his recommendations, then that becomes the new substantive motion. If the council disagrees, then the substantive motion as printed continues, and then you will be able to move your amendment as set out in the order paper. So therefore, that Amendment 3, depending on the outcome of his voting on his amendment, could fall. And the only way we can, I'm trying to think of the correct word, resurrect it, so to speak, is to put it in your into your amendment to the motion.
Without prejudicing what happens to his amendment.
Correct.
and I would need to seek some guidance from the Chief Whip of the Majority Labour Group and also the seconder of the amendment, Councillor John
Can I
Whitworth.
ask that that happens so we can continue? I'm just conscious
Yeah.
of the time, so if I can answer, what we will do, we will pause again on this item and I will encourage the Chair to continue with the rest of Council's business if Council doesn't mind, because I'm conscious that constitutionally we cannot go beyond 9:30.
Yeah. Okay.
Is that agreed? Thank you. Turn that off. It's up to you. If you want to defer. Right. No, I can't do it. Right, so let me just, I can't do it.
Hi, I would like to propose a motion to defer the MSG sphere motion because we've only got 12 minutes left to discuss the emergency motion from Mayor Fears, and I think that we need to discuss that. And I'm not sure that we're going to figure this out in 12 minutes.
Thank you very much.
So,
Right. Where we're at the moment is that Councillor, excuse me, Councillor Higgins Councillor Higgins want to defer his motion because I think that's the best course of action at this point in time, okay, because you don't want to lose the councillor. So, do we agree? Thank you very much for your patience. Thank you for that. So that motion is deferred. Item 18. Where's the emergency motion? Where's the emergency motion? We're trying to find your emergency motion, Chair. Yeah. Yeah, page. Okay. Right. Bear with me. I now move to the final motion, the emergency motion proposed by Mayor Roxana Fiaz. I called upon Mayor Roxana Fiaz to propose her motion, and you have up to 5 minutes, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm not going to be using all of 5 minutes because as much time that can be given to other members to participate in this really debate. I just really wanted to draw colleagues' attention to the resolve section of the emergency motion, drawing specific attention to the importance of acknowledging the extreme heat conditions that we've experienced over recent weeks, which will be an enduring feature of our lived realities as human beings, and also the ongoing work that the council needs to be doing, collaborating with organisations and networks such as UK 100 and C40 cities, as well as other local authorities to coordinate the work, and also to undertake vital and important analysis as to the cost implications relating to the council stock of council homes to ensure their resilience to extreme heat conditions. Now, we will be negligent not to begin looking at this, and in the context of our carbon zero climate emergency response and requirements to get there by 2045, this work will complement the work that we'll be doing with regards to how we allocate our monies in order to meet that challenge, but also at the same time contend with the impact of the climate change that we're experiencing, because it is real. I'll conclude there. Thank you very much, Chair.
I take it, look, you're seconding.
Yes, please, just very briefly, Chair. I'll just say Newham is one of the most vulnerable local authorities to heat waves in Britain. and that in the UK, people of colour are 4 times more likely to live in heatwave high-risk areas. And very briefly, secondly, I would say the fire brigade in London declared a major incident following the busiest period since the Second World War. It's ridiculous and an embarrassment that they've received a paltry 2% pay offer. They're heroes for what they did here in Newham and across our capital. Thank you.
Does any member wish to speak? Councillor Ali.
Clearly stating that the climate is transforming very, very rapidly and is having serious impact on all of us across the world. And as we all know, back in 2019, this council agreed the climate emergency motion, and that was a very brave step, in those days, particularly when we are facing cuts and austerities measures across the board. This is something that government ought to be doing widely, and we've seen the Paris Declaration, we've had the COP24. Despite government hosting that COP24, unfortunately, they haven't done anything other than simple words. But from Newham's perspective, Chair, I'm sure you will agree that despite difficulties we have had, we've made tremendous progress, and credit to a number of my colleagues in the Cabinet, especially the Deputy Mayor. We've seen the low emissions charges we've introduced, the low traffic neighborhoods, school street closures. We're looking at car-free park developments, and many other initiatives that we've taken in order to support our mission. And this emergency motion is a testimony of this administration to show that it wants to continue with that momentum to make sure that we make a little impact that we can. As David said, it's a global problem, but we are a small fish in the sea, but any little thing we do will have an impact. But I really support this motion wholeheartedly, and I believe that we will continue to do that. And as the Mayor said earlier, that we'll be putting forward a green budget next year, and this will be an integral part of that process in terms of review of policies and decisions to make sure that we do all we can. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Higgins. Could you make it short as possible, please?
Yes. Thank you so much to Mayor Fiaz for putting forward this motion. I cannot recall right this second who's... Councillor Luke Charters as well for seconding it. Green Group will be supporting this, and we also want to thank the Chair for postponing full council. We think that that was the right thing to do. We think it's really important that this, we can all agree right now, but we also need to think about this in context of the Silvertown Tunnel and London City Airport, and the consequences of both of those things for the continued and increased high heat events that we are going to see. And that's less for the people in this room, but for other people who have powers over the people of Newham in their actions. So thank you for this motion. We'll be supporting it. And I hope everyone has a great summer as well.
Mayor Fiaz, would you like the right of reply?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Therefore, we now move to the vote. Those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. Those against? Any abstentions? That is therefore carried. Thank you very much indeed. We now move to item 16, appointments. Are there any appointments announced by the Mayor? Mayor Fiaz.
Chair, if I can kindly announce that the Growth Borough Partnership, comprising of the London Borough of Newham, London Borough of Hackney, London Borough of Tower Hamlets and the London Borough of Waltham Forest, appoints leaders of those councils to sit on the Growth Borough Partnership Board. So I'll be appointed, subject to your approval, of course. No, is it an announcement or an approval? Anyway, I'm just letting you know. But if it is an approval, I hope you approve. And also, I'll be making changes to the Newham Council's representation on the Stratford original bid, and I'll be bringing that to September full council.
Thank you very much. To be noted. Thank you. Chief Whip, Deputy Chief Whip. An appointments, this is, yeah, okay.
We can't hear you. We have 3 minutes.
Quiet, please. Let him finish. Go on. There's a mic behind you.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, I would like to announce a newly appointed independent chair to the audit committee, which is Fiona Marsh, and an independent, a newly appointed independent member to the audit committee, which is Kulsum Set. And there is a vacancy on the audit committee, which will be filled by September, so announcement will be made at the next meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is that agreed? Thank you. Moving to item 18, conferring the title of Honorary Alderman or Freeman of the Borough. You may. Yeah. Do we have a seconder? Seconder? Councillor. Thank you very much indeed. We will now move to the vote. Those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. Those against? Any abstentions? That is therefore carried, and that's item 18. And I'll be happy to let you know that brings us to the end of this meeting. So thank you very much for forbearance. Thank you.
1 minute to go. There's some food down there and all. Yep. Yeah, I know, I could see you. I was desperately trying to... I was trying to tell him he's got some food down there.
Right. So this